Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Racers Driving League for Season 19, Round 6 of the Championship. Welcome to the Sunshine State of Miami for the Miami Grand Prix. I'm your host, Zach Arsley, here to take you through all the action of what should be a thoroughly enjoyable evening of motorsport as we get set then for so far been a season dominated by one Salve Grumio, the reigning drivers' champion. Of course, 4 wins from the first 5 rounds, but was denied last week by Touch Me Pope on his return to the RDL Grid. This is his second start since coming back full times. He's the second race winner of the campaign as we wait for the first few cars to head onto the circuit for qualifying. There is Che, who of course dealt with a rather unfortunate end to his Saudi Arabian Grand Prix last week in Jeddah. Of course, ended the race on his roof on the final lap, or on his lid rather, in that Haas after late contact with Ben. So looking to try and bounce back then. Che still second place in the Drivers' Championship with 55 points currently out of the lead. So a lot of work to do in tonight's Grand Prix to help himself close that gap and obviously to try and stop Grumio. So it all comes down to qualifying then to start things off, and we'll see who's got the pace course. Che has been the pace setter so far in terms of qualifying this season. So whether he's got the pace tonight to try and keep himself on top of that chart, we'll have to wait and see. But of course, Haas has been strong in the first 5 rounds. Currently only 4 points back in the Constructors' Championship. Williams now in the lead with a combination of Grumio and JB. So the 2 Haas boys are going to try and bounce back here. Che and Dan in the race here tonight and looking to make an impact. So coming through then into the second and towards the end of the second sector and start the final sector. Looking here for a strong start on their first lap for Che, and the car in front of one of the Ferraris. I believe that is EJ, who is Elmer. So we've got a full grid in for tonight's Grand Prix. Of course, few reserves in the race for tonight. Carl Carrot returns again as a reserve this week for Aston Martin, and we also have. Sorry, I lost my count. Brashman in the Red Bull in the sister Red Bull alongside Imri this week. Matthew not here for this one. And in terms of the one missing driver, we're missing Webbsy at the minute. He'll be joining us midway through qualifying, so expect to see him later on in the other Alpine course. Caught there, the lone Alpine as of right now. So Brashman then run on board with him as he leaves turn number 17 for the first lap. So we'll head on board with the Red Bull now and see what he's got down at this main straight, going down towards turn 1. It's a short main straight, one of course of 3 DRS zones on the circuit. Into turn 1, very tight right-hander there, met immediately with turns 2 and 3, so a very left-right start to the lap as makes his way through that long, winding right-hander of turn 3. Bit of a moment to breathe here on this next straight, going to go down towards turn 4. Again, a very technical first sector here, of course. It's one of the circuits that's been freshly LiDAR scanned for Season 19. So as Brashman rounds turn number 7 towards turn 8 now, trying to avoid track limits there, running wide out of the corner entry to turn 8. End of the first sector, 30.089 on the board for Brashman. Second DRS zone now incoming, so he makes his way up towards turn number 11. Of course, we'll start the stadium section then in towards the braking zone. One of the tighter braking zones on the circuit. Of course, one of the tightest corners there as well. Look how far across he's got on the steering in the left-hander there. Through turn 12, keeping the car under control. Careful to avoid losing traction going through turns 12 and 13. The chicane's been remodified, a bit more lenient on drivers this season. Dan fastest, 126.6 on the board. And one more DRS zone if Brashman's complete his first lap. So DRS about to come into play as he reaches the point now. Che now fastest, 1 minute 26.1. Those are the times to beat early on then from the 2 Haas machines. But Brashman though in towards the final proper braking zone on the circuit, turn 17. Of course, 2 more corners to navigate, turns 18 and 19 when he leaves this last turn and past Hard Rock Stadium once again up towards the line to complete that first lap. It's going to be a 1 minute 126.9 for Brash. So awfully close there to a 127. Managed to get over the line in 3rd place. EJ P4, Card Carrot in P5. So work to be done early on then for Card Carrot. Of course, reserving for the 2nd week in a row. There's Landlord there running through the end of the first sector now, leaving turn number 8. It's a 29.5 for Landlord, so half a second quicker, and his teammate AT there could be in position to try and give him a good tow here on the way down towards turn number 11. So they come then, Landlord in a good position. I imagine AT will move over at some stage. And into the left-hander goes Landlord. So that tow works perfection there. Stand by just for a moment. Okay, apologies, we are now back in. I'm hoping that'll fix the slightly choppy gameplay there as here comes Lando to complete that lap. 1:26.3 puts him into second place, just behind Che by about 0.2 or so. Brashman still there, now down to P4. HB Cooking P5 for Salborn, 27.1 on the board for him. Ethan P6, EJ P7. Card Carrot the last of the cars that set lap times. 18 now coming through to start the first lap of his own. And there's Grumio there, running in P11 as it stands right now, looking for... We're still looking for his first pole of the season. He was denied last week by Cott. And look at trying to avoid the same fate this time around, as he makes his way down towards the braking zone at turn 17. One of the Red Bulls there in front of him, that will be the Stubby Brashman. No, apologies, that's one of the RBs. That will be Alvar, from what I've got on my screen there. And Alvar coming through to complete his first lap. It's going to be a 1 minute 28.031 as you saw Grumio go second fastest there. So that gap to Che being bridged more and more here. So 1:26.212 from Grumio. Still hunting for that first pole of the campaign, as I say. As JB, his teammate, emerges there just behind Alvar and Grumio, looking for his first lap of the session. JB, of course, as always, sort of an enigma in qualifying in terms of whether he'll get dropped out in Q1 or whether he'll reach Q3. You can never really go into a qualifying session and be confident about where JB will wind up in the order. But I've been told that there's been quite a few drivers struggling in terms of handling over the course of the practice session that was run earlier on. A lot of drivers feeling like their cars are just out of control across the circuit. No pace in them whatsoever. So we'll see in terms of who's mastering that as of right now. There's still, as it stands, 6 drivers yet to set lap times. Sorry, apologies, 5, because Ben has a qualifying ban after the incident last week. Of course, some late punctures for Ben's RB led to a number of incidents down the field in the closing stages. And Ben, as a result, receiving a quali ban for this week. So we're starting dead last then, or potentially in P19 should Websy arrive after the end of Q1, as there is Grumio in behind there. And I think those two are gearing up to give JB a tow potentially on the run down towards turn 11, perhaps later on, perhaps down the main straight. So I have to keep an eye out here in terms of what these two have up their sleeve. If Grumio pulls away a bit here, I mean, he could just be pitting. That could also be a conclusion. The yellow flag, and that's one of the slow Ferraris in the second sector. That will be Curtis. Curtis in P8 as of right now. So Grumio stays out then. So I think let's try and give JB a tow. We'll see what those two have up their sleeves. So JB comes through to start his first lap now. I'm going towards turn 1. Let's run on board. And JB off the circuit there, and that was potentially quite a nasty shunt. He managed to avoid that only just. Whether he's got damage, not entirely sure there. I have to double check when the cameras roll back through. But tough luck there for JB. Oh, that's the whole front wing gone there. So an unfortunate spin there, and I assume Grumio was set up to give him a tow around this point of the circuit here, but not to be this time. JB would have to return to the pits and look to try and rectify that front wing, getting a fresh one on, and return out for a second lap. He's got 8 minutes to go, so there's still time to get another lap in. So I suppose it's not panic stations for JB just yet. We'll keep an eye out for him as the next few cars coming out of the circuit. Lando retires, Chase also retired, as has Dan, so 2 Haas drivers, and now both McLaren drivers calling it quits as AT retires too. So those guys likely safe in Q2. And there is Pope on the run down towards turn 17. Right, apologies for that. Just trying to fix the current slightly choppy issue in terms of the footage. But hopefully everything should be all okay now. I'll turn it down a little bit. And we'll see here if anyone can improve on current laps. Imri's out on the circuit as of right now. And towards the line for his first lap. Imri goes fastest. First 125 of the evening. 125.902. Fantastic first lap. We managed to catch the end of that with Imri. Imri and Dan this evening both running the number 20. And I believe also running tribute helmets as well. That being a tribute to the late Diogo Jota, who passed last week. So, of course, so perhaps looking for their first victory of the season in honour of the former Liverpool player there. But Imri fastest then, so a good start to things. We'll see what he's got lined up later on in the evening. Of course, he's taken one pole this season. That was back in the 4th race of the season. And we'll see if he can try and take a second pole in 3 weeks. Okay, I'm going to have to shut this down.